Hello, Melissa with Atlas CFO, bringing your monthly mission to you. Your monthly mission for May, that's a tongue twister, is to make sure that you are on track for your financial performance for the year. May is a great month to do that. Now remember, our monthly missions are all about working on the business, not just in it, and so you can get that delivered to your email. If you want to go to our website and sign up for monthly missions, it will come to your inbox, and that is your reminder to do your monthly mission to work on your business for the month. Okay, let's get started. May is the month that we pick that is the time to assess and plan and make actions on the year, because we're about 40% through the year. We typically like to use the April financial statements because that gives us this best baseline. Now we're basing all of this on a calendar year. If you're a fiscal year, you can still use the 5th month. It's a good gauge for that assessment. So you're really going to have 4 months of performance already under your belt, and then the 5th month is for planning. The reason why we like this 5th month so much is we still have all this time. And in our neck of the woods, we have a lot of work that gets done in the summer, so we can plan for all of that summer work right now. We can start planning for the backlog of the fall and that pipeline and what happens in winter right now. We can make changes to overhead right now and still hit every goal that we have. We found that we still like to do some planning in the fall, absolutely. And that planning is very specific. It's very strategic because we're really getting down to the end and we want to make sure that we have everything the way we want it. The planning in May is the big picture, this overall, are we going to hit our net income, our revenue, our types of work? We're really looking for this bigger picture plan. That's why we like May so much. So you'll see we're going to give you 5 items to gather, and then we're going to ask 5 questions, and then we're going to talk about 5 actions you can take. So our top 5 items to gather. Year to date, that's what the YTD, year to date, profit and loss, income statement, operating statement, depending on your software, what name this is called. So I will typically call it an income statement, but it could be called something different in your software. I run the report from January to April, and I make it comparative, so I want to do January to April this year and January to April last year. I also like to have a balance sheet. Now, if we're going to do April, we have the balance sheet as of April as well. If I can get a comparative balance sheet, I'll get one. Some softwares have it, some don't. Also, the WIP schedule, my favorite. You know I love the WIP schedule, so get your WIP schedule out for the end of April because you're going to use it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that specific schedule here in a bit. I look at budget to actual, and depending again, if you followed along in our monthly mission earlier this year, you put your budget in your software. If you didn't and you have your budget in Excel, that's good, we'll use that. And finally, if we have any bank covenants or surety requirements, or quite frankly, just internal goals, we'll use any of that. I decided to take a minute and just give you a little picture of what each one of these reports looks like in QuickBooks. Now this is QuickBooks Desktop. I know there's tons and tons of software out there. I'm just giving you an idea of kind of the format and the look of it so you can find it if you're not using QuickBooks. And if you are using QuickBooks, you have the title so you can go find it in your report section. This one is our profit and loss comparative. So I've described it to you, but you can see these top headings and you can see the name of it. So you can run that report. Next up, I have our budget to actual. So this is assuming that you've entered a budget into your software. In this example, it's this QuickBooks Desktop version. And you can see the name of the report is Profit and Loss Budget versus Actual. Pretty self-explanatory. I'm only showing you just the top section. The real power in this report is in that overhead section, which is below this. And our favorite WIP schedule. So here's an example WIP schedule, and this one very specifically, over here clear to the right, do you see this revenue backlog and this gross profit backlog? Those will really help us as we are planning, because that's going to tell us, ooh, look at that gross profit backlog. That's going to tell us how much money we have to cover overhead. So keep that handy. Now these are very broad pictures here. Whenever we do this with clients, we actually use our own proprietary, really, in software. We're building it into software called the Atlas Growth Model. And what we do with that is we gather all of this information And we have software that allows us to project and to show you what your year is going to look like so that you can make all of these adjustments. Then we do scenario planning actually embedded in the software. So if you don't do that, then that's certainly coming available to you. If you are already our client and you're working on that, the big thing for your takeaway is to gather this information up and be ready to schedule that appointment if it's not already scheduled. So I want to just make sure we talk about that real quick because there's a lot of data here. And I'll tell you, without the tool, it takes a little bit of time. With the tool, this is just a lot easier. So now that we've gathered up all of our information, we're going to ask ourselves 5 analytical questions. Now I've picked 5 questions. You can choose your own 5 questions, but these are kind of where I start. I want to know whether my budget is on track with my overhead. Is there anything I need to pay attention to? Now, I have a rule. If it's on, I move on. If it's off, that's whenever I want to pay attention. Or if I know that there's something coming that's going to cause problems. On, if it's on, move on. The next thing is my total revenue compared to my goal revenue. I want to know where that is lining up. We've talked in previous videos about backlog as needing to be about 30% of your goal revenue. This is really looking at how much have we already put in place because we've got 40% of our year. Do we have 40% of our revenue? Not usually in our industry. In construction, the winter months, yeah, it's a little slow. Gross profit. I want to make sure that it's in line with expectations and what our plans are. I want to know how it compares to prior years. Well, it's so nice whenever you can look back because, hey, we remember that year. Whenever you're looking forward, oh, sometimes it's hard. So if I have a budget, I have something to compare it to. If I don't have a budget, I can use last year. And even if I do have a budget, I still like to look at last year. It gives me an idea of how that revenue is going to come in, how the cash is going to flow when certain expenses hit. So looking at the prior year can be a big helper to you. And finally, I'll do some ratio analysis. So if I know that current ratio is important, I'm going to go ahead and do my current ratio right now to see if I'm on track. If I'm on track, again, I move on. If I'm off, then I want to see what I need to make sure to include or analyze or consider so I can get that done by the end of the year. So now that we've done our analysis questions, we need to go for action questions. And we have to decide, what are we going to do about this? It's not enough to just say, well, that was interesting. No, now we got to do something. So I look at, on my overhead account, what accounts do I need to watch? Do I want to make a list of them? Do I want to put a sticky note? Do I want to tell everybody, hey, too much office supplies? Whatever it is, I want to know what action am I going to take on overhead. Next is jobs in the pipeline. So there's kind of 2 ways to think about this. One is we can go back to our job schedule and we can look at jobs that are still under process so that we can determine how those are going. But we also need to know what is coming. So this is a pipeline question. What jobs are we bidding right now that are going to come to us in the later months that are going to enable us to hit these goals? What jobs do I have potential to increase gross profit? Again, you see how I love this job schedule. Yes, I love it. Okay, so I can look at my job schedule and I can say, gosh, if we made 1% more on this one particular job, it makes a big impact financially. That information is great for operations because now they know what to focus on. Sometimes it just feels like there's so much you can't know where to start. Well, if you could identify and squeeze down just to the one job and the 1%, you can really help people just, okay, I know what to do. This is why that projection model is so important because we do all that scenario and we say, okay, this is the job to focus or this is the job to go get because it makes the impact you want. Backlog and overhead. We talked about that just briefly whenever we looked at the job schedule. I'm looking to see if my gross profit backlog is going to cover how many months of overhead. This is great information so you know whether you're to the point where you're adding dollars of profit or are you still covering overhead. And finally, I like to look at how backlog is going to run through the organization in cash flow. That's not something I've shown you in this video. It actually is a bigger expanded version. We do have other cash flow videos in YouTube, so if you want to check those out, those might be some good indicators on how to look at cash flow. I understand that this is a big project, that you've got to gather all this information up. You've got to analyze what you have, and then you have to decide the action items, and you usually have to get a team involved to get the action items done. This is the time. May is the month. If you're going to do it in May. Your monthly mission is to take the time, dig in, come up with what you need to do so that you can have the year you want. It makes it way more fun. If you want to dig deep into this topic, we have a bunch of videos, especially on the job schedule. We have some videos on budgets and ratios and digging into this process with projections. Please join us in our all access. We'd love to have you. And thank you very much for joining me today. And I hope you have a great day and a great May, and that you are able to take this time and just really take control of the year. Thanks. Bye.